Welcome, everybody. It's so good to have you here. I'm delighted you made it in Philadelphia on a rainy and hot evening. For those of you joining us by Zoom, we're delighted that you are Zooming in from wherever you are. We'd love to see where you are. If you want to put that in the chat, we know that our audience is wide and broad for this. So my name is Justina Barrett. I'm the Chief Learning and Engagement Officer here at the Historical Society of Pennsylvania, and delighted to welcome you to tonight's program, The Life and Work of David Rittenhouse. Since 1824, HSP has been collecting and acquiring a vast array of documents that bring the people of the past into conversations with us today. This is our birthday year, and we enter our third century, eager to invite you to find yourself in history, to connect with the past and make discoveries, meaningful discoveries about who you are and who we are together as a country. We are so delighted that you have joined us in this endeavor this evening to explore that shared American history. Our collection contains over 21 million documents, graphic items, and books that hold the stories of all Americans, with a particular emphasis on early American history, as well as ethnic and minority groups, science and technology, the arts, and genealogical research. So for my friends at home on Zoom, just a few housekeeping notes. If you need, this is closed captioned. If you need the closed captioning, you can hit the CC button. We are recording this, and we will be sending it out to all participants, all registrants, tomorrow evening. We should have time for a few questions. I'm sensitive to time. So if there are a few, we'll be able to take them in the Q&A box and here on site. And we are in webinar mode, which means we cannot see you and you cannot see each other. So again, it's best to have some chat in the chat and use the Q&A box for questions. So tonight's talk with Don Fennimore will discuss the life and work of celebrated Philadelphia astronomer, mathematician, and clockmaker David Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse, we all know, was indeed a significant figure in revolutionary Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and revolutionary America. His life and work represents well HSP's strategic theme, Pennsylvania, Crucible of the Nation. As many of you know, HSP's collections are deep in this area. And for those of you on site, we have pulled some of the collections related to David Rittenhouse, to his community, to his service in the Revolutionary War, as well as some other documents that represent the interest at the time in early American astronomy, the early American interest in astronomy. So this is a great time to have you, Don Fennimore, as we talk about Pennsylvania, Crucible of the Nation, to walk us through this fascinating figure, David Rittenhouse. So Don Fennimore, many of us know him as the curator at the Winterthur Museum, Gardens and Libraries, where he was since 1971. He himself was a graduate of and then was a teacher in the Winterthur program in early American material culture, which is how I had the privilege of learning and meeting Don as a student in that graduate program. And his patience, his clarity, and his passion made him a perfect educator for graduate students to get them interested in silver, ironwork, copper, and of course, clocks and clockworks. So we were just so blessed to have you as a teacher, Don. He has been researching and writing both as a curator at Winterthur and in the nearly 20 years since his retirement, publishing a number of books, and most recently, as you see on the screen, David Rittenhouse, Philosopher-Mechanic of Colonial Philadelphia, and his famous clocks. This is a book project that would not have been possible without the support of the Kane Wallace Foundation, and we are pleased to have Ed King here tonight. So thank you for supporting this work. And Don, thank you for joining us. Do you want to come up on stage and walk us through David Rittenhouse and his clocks and his other works? Thank you.
Thank you, Justina, and good evening, everyone. I'm very, very happy to be here to talk about a subject that has interested me for a long time and that has consumed my interest for quite a while. And that is, of course, David Rittenhouse and his life and his work during his lifetime in Philadelphia in the 18th century. We'll be talking about his clocks, of course. That's the focus of the time I'm spending with you today. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about background and context, because I believe that's important in helping to understand the man and the legacy that he created during his lifetime. So without further ado, we'll start on that journey. But before we leave the image on the screen, I call your attention to the piece of paper that he's pointing to. Keep that in mind, because we're going to revisit that piece of paper shortly. So, background and context. The story, insofar as I determined it should start, was with David's great-grandfather, a man by the name of Willem Rittenhouse, who was born in Germany and trained there during his youth as a paper maker. He was presumed to be reasonably successful during his youth, but at some point he determined that he was not happy with his lot in life. So he decided that he was going to seek a better future, and that was in the New World. So as a young man, he crossed the Atlantic, arrived in New York in the 1680s, and quickly, through intercoastal ship, found his way to Philadelphia. And in Philadelphia, then took a land route. And let me point this out. Philadelphia, the land route north to the village of Germantown, land route north to the village of Germantown, where he decided to settle. It was a logical choice on his part because it was a German-speaking community. He was a German immigrant, German-speaking, so it was a comfortable context for him. He bought property in Germantown, built himself a house, and within 2 years, this is 1688, within 2 years, he had bought property on the Monashone Creek, slightly west of Germantown, and built himself a paper mill, a logical choice. His paper mill right there, his paper mill right there, slightly less west of Germantown. His paper mill was the first built in America, and he was reasonably successful. He practiced paper making there during his lifetime. On his death, he passed the mill to his son, Nicholas, who operated the paper mill during his lifetime. On his death, he passed it to his son, Matthias. Matthias, as a young man, began making paper at his grandfather's paper mill. And at some point shortly thereafter, he decided that this really wasn't for me. Paper making is a good business to have, but it just doesn't suit me. So shortly after assuming responsibility for the paper mill, he decided that he was going to give it up and move. So that's exactly what he did. Matthias turned the paper mill over to other individuals and moved to the north and west into Norriton Township, Philadelphia County, now Montgomery County. And this was about 1634, when his son David was 2 years old. And the image you see on the screen now is that farm that Matthias started farming in 1734. As a demanding father, he expected his son David to follow in his footsteps, even though he didn't follow in his father's footsteps. David was a dutiful son and indeed worked on his father's farm, as his father had requested, but his heart wasn't in it. His passion, his enjoyment, his enthusiasm lay elsewhere. and that was the nighttime sky. Every free moment he had, he turned his attention to the nighttime sky and everything pertaining to it, which included mathematics. Mathematics and astronomy were his lifetime passions. And he devoted every waking hour, and that's even, of course, into the midnight hours, studying and learning everything he could about nighttime sky, constellations, stars, planets, and all related matters. In order to do that, he, of course, had to have proper equipment. So one of the first things he did when he was able to do so was to have an observatory built. And you see an image of that observatory on his father's, subsequently his own land, that he used to study the starry sky. I join with that a 1792 detail of a map of Pennsylvania. The detail is of Montgomery County. And I highlight this for you because right there at the tip of that arrow, you will see Rittenhouse's observatory. So that observatory, even after his death, was significant enough that it actually found its way onto maps of Pennsylvania, which I find very interesting detail about the man. So here Rittenhouse was devoting his time and attention to the nighttime sky, and in doing so, becoming a member of the astronomical community. And as a part of the astronomical community, he learned of an event that was about to happen on June 3rd, 1769, that electrified the astronomical community, including Rittenhouse. And that was the passage of Venus between Earth and the Sun, the so-called transit of Venus. He considered this to be very important. Why did he consider it important? Because it allowed for observations of this event to take place from multiple locations on the Earth that would then allow those observers to determine the distance from the Earth to the Sun, 93 million miles. Why is that important? It's called the astronomical unit. It's important because with that information, astronomers and students of the subject can then make determinations about distances between astronomical bodies in the solar system, distance from Sun to Venus, Venus to Mars, et cetera, et cetera. So this was something that all members of the astronomical community were interested in pursuing and studying and learning. This is the piece of paper I called your attention to on the screen right now. And it is actually Rittenhouse's record of that transit between Earth and the Sun. The large semicircle is the Sun. Large semicircle is the Sun. The series of small circles are Venus. Small circles here are Venus. And this is Rittenhouse's record of that transit. Why is his name so involved with this? Well, there's a reason. There's actually a reason, even though he was one of many, many, many men who studied and observed this transit throughout the world, actually, from the South Pacific to Northern Europe. Even though he was one of only men to observe this, there was something that set him apart. And that was he was the only self-trained observer of this event. All others were professionally trained, working with professionally built equipment. Rittenhouse didn't have that luxury. He had fortunately had the brilliance to teach himself not only how to study the nighttime sky, but also to build the instruments he needed for these observations. And we see two of these instruments that are on the screen right now: a transit and equal altitude instrument on the left, and an astronomical regulator or clock on the right, both of which he needed for accurate observation of this celestial event. So because of his self-training and his ability to build his own instruments, which were just as good in many ways as professionally built European instruments, he was jettisoned instantly to international fame because of his brilliance. So he became, and this was 1769, as I said. He was born in 1732, so he's still a young man. With that fame, his name was talked of with reverence throughout the astronomical community on both sides of the Atlantic. Well, that's all well and good to be famous, but you can't earn a living being famous. He needed to earn a living. He promised his father, when he discussed back and forth with his father about what he wanted to do other than farming, his father said, okay, finally, okay, you can be an astronomer, but you're going to have to earn your own living. You can't look to me for money. The way he earned his living, he decided, was to build scientific instruments. And we see one such example here, a theodolite that he built for the purpose of surveying. So building scientific instruments and surveying were a way in which he could earn a living. And we see a detail of a map of the greater Chesapeake Bay area where we'll see, and I'll try to point this out for you. I'm not getting my highlighter to work the way I want it to. But at any rate, you'll see this semicircle right here, which is part of a circle around Newcastle County. Rittenhouse surveyed that. Here you see it again. And he also surveyed the east-west line, which was the south border of Pennsylvania with Maryland. Subsequently surveyed by Mason and Dixon, and now called the Mason and Dixon line. In my opinion, it should be called the Rittenhouse line because Rittenhouse first surveyed it. But be that as it may, that's history for you. At any rate, so he busied himself surveying and building surveying instruments, such as you see on the screen now. Other kinds of philosophical instruments that he created were telescopic levels. You see an example on the screen to the left. And thermometers and barometers, which you see an example of on the right-hand side of the screen. But of course, we're all here for his clocks. So let's turn our attention to some of his clocks. And I want to work through his clocks, because he made many different kinds. I want to work from the most basic that he built. Thank you, Justina. Just in time. The most basic clocks that he built to the most complex. And this is an example of the most basic. This is a 30-hour or one-day clock that we're looking at here. And I want to write a footnote here. For Rittenhouse's activity and work, we're looking at the mechanism, not the case. The cases were made by cabinet makers with whom Rittenhouse collaborated. So we'll concentrate our focus on the mechanical movement for Rittenhouse's responsibility. As I said, a 30-hour or one-day clock, pretty basic example of the sort of clock that he would have been learned to make at the outset when he was working from the 1740s, late 40s through the late 50s in Norriton Township, Pennsylvania County. What can I point out about this clock? It gives us 3 bits of information. And those bits of information are the hour, the minute, and the date of the month. Hour, minute, date of the month. It's very, very basic information. It's just the sort of information that locals in his area would need for living their lives as they needed to. You'll see by the upper image on the screen where he signed his name, D. Rittenhouse, to indicate that he was responsible for the artistry and the technology of this and could be turned to for any problems that might arise when it was running for the owner. Moving from this, we'll look at the next category of clock, which is slightly increased in complexity, which is an 8-day or 1 week long mechanism. It provides 4 bits of information, so more information than the example we saw. The 3 bits of information that we mentioned for the previous one, hour, minute, and date of the month, you see those on this, but it also offers seconds. And those seconds are indicated right here, right here. Who in the world, please tell me, who in the 18th century needed to know seconds? Can't think of any reason why anybody would need to know seconds. And yet clockmakers by the middle of the 18th century felt it was necessary to build seconds into their clocks, and Rittenhouse was foremost among them. So one other point I want to mention to you with respect to this clock, in the arched section, which is built into 8-day clocks, it's not present for the most part in 30-hour clocks, where he engraved his name and his location. Isn't that interesting? No location on the 30-hour clock that we saw previously, but location on the 8-day. Why should that be? Well, we don't really know, but I surmise it's because his reputation was spreading during this time as we get into the 1750s or so, which is approximately when this clock was made. And his people from outside the area, his immediate area, Norriton Township, were demanding his clocks. So he saw it as an opportunity to advertise his location. So if anybody needed a clock from farther afield, they knew where to look. Needed to look in Norriton Township. Moving to the next level of clockmaking that Rittenhouse was responsible for, and we're looking here at not a 30-hour clock, not an 8-day clock, but a 30-day clock, 1 month going clock that tells us 9 bits of information. All those that I outlined with the previous clocks, plus through the secondary dials, here, 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 and here, 1 at each corner, here, 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 and here, plus in the arch, provides 5 more bits of information. Phase of the moon, the equation of time, which reconciles natural time with clock time. The two are slightly different. A mechanism that allows the owner to change from one tune to another. This is a musical clock. It plays 6 tunes. It also has the signs of the zodiac. And of course, it has that feature in the arch, an orrery, a miniature solar system. So this is a very, very ambitious clock, the likes of which few, if any, other clockmakers during his lifetime. And this is the mid-1760s we're talking about now, 1765, 66, somewhere in there that this clock was made. As complicated as that clock is, this one is even more so. This is his premier example, the one for whom he is most famous. This clock is owned by Drexel. The one we looked at previously, you all know, it's owned by the Pennsylvania Hospital. So this clock, and if you've never seen it, please go to see it. You would enjoy it. It's just overwhelming. It's a magnificent example of an artisan's work. So this clock has all the features that I pointed out for the Pennsylvania Hospital clock, plus 2 more. And those are, it shows the movement of the Earth and the Sun and the zodiac. And it has a very elaborate strike control where you can do all kinds of interesting different things with the strikes, the strike and the music. And those features are here and here. They are here and here. Yes. Okay, yes, the features that control the music and the strike are the vertical appliques on the left and the right side of the dial, the silvered appliques. So quite a remarkable thing. And this clock dates immediately after the Pennsylvania hospital clock that we just looked at. So 1766, 67, somewhere in there. Having completed this clock with its orrery, which depicts the sun at the center of that blue circle and the then known planets surrounding it, he then turned his attention to another device that is pretty overwhelming. What was the question?
It says David Rittenhouse.
Yeah, F-E-C-I-T. It's Latin for makes this or made this, fake it. David Rittenhouse, fake it. Latin. He's showing off a little bit of special details there. He turns his attention immediately to building an even more complex device, which, as I mentioned before, is an orrery. Instead of being an addition to a clock, he built a full freestanding orrery. And he built that for Princeton University. Actually, it was intended for the University of Pennsylvania, but the president of Princeton snuck in quickly behind the scenes and convinced Rittenhouse to sell it to Princeton, which upset the precept of the University of Pennsylvania, who insisted, you need to build me one. So he actually built two. Both survive, but the one at Princeton has undergone many indignities over time, so it's just a fragment of what it was. The University of Pennsylvania example, which is what we're looking at now, is complete and survives in toto. What was he intending to do with this device? It's a teaching device. That's why both of these examples were directed to universities, because they were used for teaching. So let me use his words to describe what's going on with these two devices. We're going to start with the center panel, and his words are, from the center panel arises an axis to support a gilded brass ball. We all see at the very center of that center panel a small brass ball that is intended to represent the sun. Round this ball move others made of brass or ivory to represent the planets in our solar system, which the known planets then were 5, as I recall: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and Jupiter. Yes. So that describes the center panel, a detail of which you see to the far right of the screen. The left panel, he says, will exhibit all the appearances of Jupiter and his satellites, and all the appearances of Saturn with his rings and satellites. As you can see, that panel is blank. It would appear that both orreries are such that that feature was never completed. For some reason, we don't know why, but he never completed that panel of both orreries. Let's turn our attention to the right panel. His words describe the right panel will represent all the phenomena of the moon, particularly the exact time, quantity, and duration of her eclipses. So this was his intent and the result of his effort. He spent years building the Princeton orrery from about 1767 to about 1770 or so. The second one that he built for the University of Pennsylvania, he completed in 10 months. So he learned a lot from the first one and was able to speed up production. And he was asked to build 2 other orreries, but they never happened. And we'll get to that in just a moment. So The fame that he had generated for his work in the nighttime sky and building these amazing mechanical devices caused a lot of people to say, you need to leave the rural county of Montgomery and come to the big city. And he resisted that for a long time. But finally, in 1770, he acquiesced and said, okay, I will move to Philadelphia because there is opportunity for me there. So we can look at a couple of clocks that he made in Philadelphia. Here we see one of them, an 8-day clock, a little different from the 8-day clock that we saw previously, with the important exception, if you look in the arch, the bottom right-hand edge of the arch, it says not Norriton, but Philadelphia. So this is a Philadelphia clock that he made while he was after he had moved there in 1770. We see here another clock, the engraved signature, which you see in the upper right-hand corner, D. Rittenhouse, Philadelphia. This is actually an astronomical regulator. This is a highly, highly precise instrument. Has no strike on it, no bell. It's only for telling the hour, the minute, and the second. And it was built for the University of Pennsylvania, again, as a teaching device. Devices such as this were highly important for those who want to study time, mathematics, and astronomy. And a regular clock is fine for household use, but it's not nearly precise enough for the kind of scientific work that was being done at universities at this time. So here he is in Philadelphia in 1770. And he was worried. One of his reasons for resisting coming to Philadelphia was he was worried about being able to earn a living. But he was convinced that he would be able to. So he did move in 1770 to Philadelphia. You see the house that he built for himself in the lower center of the screen, and the map of Philadelphia. You can make out the circle, the black circle in the upper right-hand corner of the map at 7th and Mulberry Streets. That's the location of his house that he built in Philadelphia. Actually, in 1784, he rented until then. But at any rate, coming back to earning a living, look at the list of stuff that I've put together at the top of this screen. Appointed commissioner for the Schuylkill River for making it navigable. A member of the Committee of Safety during the Revolution, part of which involved collecting weights from wherever he could find them to create musket balls. He was professor of astronomy for the College of Philadelphia. He was a trustee of Pennsylvania State Loan Office for about 12 years, and highly problematic for him because so many people were after him constantly. Money, 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 money. I need money. It was highly demanding for him. In addition to those that I just listed, he was also state treasurer from 1777 to 89. And during the 70s, he was also enlisted by many almanac makers to compute astronomical calculations for them. It finally became such a demanding thing for him that he finally said, "Look, I can't do this anymore. No more almanacs, please." In addition to this, he became a member of the American Philosophical Society in 1771, or actually in 1768, became secretary in 1771, elected vice president in 1790, president in 1791. So you get a sense here, he is in demand. Everybody wants Rittenhouse to be involved with them in doing this, doing that, doing the other. Take care of this. I need this. How did he find time to build clocks? How in the world did he do it? But he did. He did find time to build clocks. And I'm quite comfortable in presuming that one reason why he was able to do that was, I'll come to for you in a moment. But here we have another demand on his time, 1792 to 95, when he was appointed by Washington as first director of the United States Mint. Another very demanding responsibility placed on him. One reason, an important reason why he was able to build clocks while he was in Philadelphia, dealing with all these demands on his time, was that he had apprentices and journeymen working in his shop, the most important of whom was his younger brother, Benjamin, younger by 8 years, who David trained, who became a very competent clock and mechanical or philosophical instrument maker. And it's hard to say for certain when you look at a clock that says David Rittenhouse on it, that it was made by David or his brother Benjamin for him in his shop while David was taking care of other matters. So there was a close working relationship between the two there, which we can't ignore. Benjamin was a part of that story, even though he has always been in the shadows with his older brother taking the limelight. So this then is briefly the story of David Rittenhouse and his life from birth, 1732, until his death in 1796. This is his gravestone that you're looking at to the right-hand side of the screen right now. He requested that he be buried in the garden behind his house at 7th and Mulberry, which he was, but with urban renewal and expansive building took place, he was eventually reinterred at the Laurel Hill Cemetery, where his gravestone is now. Worth a visit if no one's ever been there. Laurel Hill is a wonderful, interesting place for many reasons, but one of them is because David Rittenhouse is buried there. So this then is briefly the story of David Rittenhouse from birth to death. The story could end there. We could stop there, but I don't want to stop quite now. I want to add a postscript to that, and that is life after death, because he didn't seek life after death, but it came to him anyway. Yes, question? Clockmaking tools? Yeah. You're asking about clockmaking tools? Yeah. Yeah, well, he was widely read, very widely read. He was also in close communication with the scientific community on both sides of the Atlantic. There were also English clocks that were being imported here, orrery clocks, for instance, mechanical timepieces, astronomical timepieces. So he was a quick learner through his reading, through his communication with his counterparts in England and in Germany, and also through reading. So it was through that, and there was an active trade in clockmaking instruments that were crossing the Atlantic as well. So sure, he did buy instruments he needed in Philadelphia, but he also made his own instruments when those available on the marketplace didn't suit him. We good? Okay. Life after death. He had a very active life after death, and I choose to begin that with this book that's on the screen right now. This was written by his nephew, William Barton, published in 1813. It's a 600-page biography of David Rittenhouse. It is a fascinating, entertaining read for anyone who wants to pursue learning more about David Rittenhouse. I would encourage anyone, you can get it online if you can't find it in your local bookstore or your local library, but you probably won't be able to because it's a rare book, but it's available online. And you can learn a lot about the man through this book. But also, as it happens, every single generation from Barton's book, or actually from the death of Rittenhouse himself, has been intrigued with the man and has studied him and written about him. Throughout the entire 19th century, working to a crescendo by the time you get to the centennial era, and then they move into the 20th century, it's ongoing. people writing and studying about him. And you see a few titles of the dozens and dozens of articles, and at least 10 books that I know of that were written about him in various aspects of his life and his production. And I don't see that ending, frankly. I think the interest is ongoing. Why do I say that? Because we're not that far from 2132, the 300th anniversary of his birth. Surely somebody out there, and probably more than one somebody, is thinking about what can we do to honor and continue this legacy of this man. So I suggest to you all that we stay tuned, because there's more to come. Okay, questions, comments? From Zoom, okay.
First, what was his relationship with Ben Franklin? I know they overlapped a bit. And what was their professional relationship? And then the second one is a much bigger question. Could you talk a little bit about his worldview and his views on religion? Just touch on it if you could.
Okay. Franklin and Rittenhouse were very much of like mind. They were friends. They were both members of the American Philosophical Society. They were both members of the Library Company. They were both members of multiple organizations in Philadelphia. They contacted, stayed in touch on a very regular basis. I would say they were both brilliant. They both pursued complementary matters such as lightning and electricity, such as heating homes, the so-called Pennsylvania stove, which we probably all know as the Franklin stove. That was a matter that Rittenhouse turned his attention to and improved, so it worked better. So there is a third name for such stoves, and that is the Rittenhouse stove, which, unless you tune yourself into the details that he worked into for improvements, you're likely to call a Franklin stove. But in point of fact, there's a Rittenhouse and a Franklin. So the two men were very close together, of like mind, and shared a lot with their enthusiasm, and indeed with clocks. Franklin invented a three-wheel clock. So clocks were just as much an interest to Franklin as they were to Rittenhouse.
Yes, I have a comment.
Can we answer the other question first? We have another question. That Don's going to answer.
Yes, worldview and religion. As I recall, this is not where I devoted a lot of attention and time, but as I recall, he was Presbyterian, but he was not a practicing Presbyterian. He was religious. He believed in God, and saw himself as a doing good and doing right kind of a person. He was sensitive to other people and caring. So in that sense, he was religious, but he was not an overtly religious person, which is to say, going to church every Sunday, to preaching to others and that sort of thing. That was not part of his mindset, not part of his lifestyle. But he was certainly religious. And he did believe in God. He was questioned about that toward the end of his life, and he confirmed that, yes, he did believe in a God. Okay.
Question. It's hard for us to have a conversation because we're on Zoom and they can't hear you. So we're going to limit this right now to questions, and then we can have more of a conversation.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I just wanted to comment, really isn't a question, on the relationship with Franklin. Book that you showed, biography, slide, written by someone named Barton, I think.
William Barton, his nephew.
Some of this.
Yes, I will try.
Or one of the descendants of Benjamin Franklin, I think maybe married someone named Barton. So I'm wondering if the two families were actually.
The question was, are the Franklin and the Rittenhouse families, or Franklin and the Barton families, related to each other through marriage? I don't know. You said Franklin's daughter married a Barton?
Well, or- that's
No, in truth, I don't know. I don't know.
He's thinking of beige rather than or.
Okay, questions that we can ask Don while we have the webinar running? Frank, how about you in the front? Thank you.
Could you talk a little bit about the mechanical, actual handwork that Rittenhouse did? I mean, it sounds like he was a designer and an engineer, but did he also do the mechanical assembly of the clocks himself, or did he have people who worked on that part of the process for him?
He was self-taught, and he did actually build his own clocks. Certainly, he did that as a young man in the late 1740s and on into the 50s and the 60s. As his reputation grew, demand for his clocks, of course, grew, and he needed people to work with him. Most notably his brother Benjamin, but also others. He had a few other people who worked in his shop. I think that he liked being busy and active. He prided himself on always being busy doing something. He didn't like idle hours. And one of those things was working with mechanical devices, whether they be telescopes or theodolites or barometers or clocks. So that was his first love, that and astronomy. So yes, I have to answer in answer to your question, did he build his own clocks? He did build his own clocks, but as his reputation grew, he had to look to others to help him in the shop because of limits of time. He bought tools. His father gave him money to buy tools and equipment in Philadelphia as a young man starting out, but he eventually added to that inventory with tools of his own make. Yes, sir.
These later day instruments, which were much more than clocks. And you mentioned that some of them were viewed by universities as teaching tools. But it also struck me they could be viewed as research tools too. And there probably were not a lot of instruments like that available for people doing research on. Do we know of any uses for these instruments that yielded some important discovery that is not directly connected with Rittenhouse, but might have occurred after his life, for example?
Yes, the question was, did any Rittenhouse tools and equipment lead to discoveries after his death? I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure there's members of the American Philosophical, somebody there has to be able to address a question like that, but it's beyond my purview.
One more question.
Yes.
Thank you for this talk. I really appreciate everything about it. As a teacher, I'm always teaching that Benjamin Banneker is the first one to create a clock. I have to tweak my lessons now.
Say that again? What was you?
Benjamin Banneker. He's the surveyor of DC.
Oh, I don't know that name.
So I guess you can answer this question because I want to know if there was any kind of connection between Banneker and Rittenhouse.
And Rittenhouse.
Because he did, you said he surveyed some of the area in Maryland, and Banneker is from the Maryland, DC area.
I have never encountered that name in my researches and my readings on Rittenhouse. So at this point, I can't say for certain, but I am not aware of any connection between them.
His clock in 1753, but then it had Rittenhouse in 1749, right? The first is
Banneker is later.
late 53. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I was just
Banneker's
thinking,
a generation after it.
but they were born around the same time. Benjamin Banneker was born 1731 and David Rittenhouse 1752.
Okay.
So so I was thinking that there was some kind of link there, but.
Well, I won't rule it out because he did make scientific, specifically theodolites and surveyors' compasses for people as far away as North Carolina, people as far away as New York and Massachusetts. So it's possible that your man could have been among those who bought equipment from him. Certainly. Okay.
Thank you again, Don. Thank you for a wide-ranging and deep
Thank you.
dive into David Rittenhouse. Thank you. I love your invitation for people to continue to research and your invitation to
Yeah.
scholars to be and public programs people to be thinking about the 300th anniversary, which is right around the corner. For those of you on site here, we do have references to the 1932 celebration. We at HSP hosted an exhibit to explore David Rittenhouse. And so we have some of those documents over there, as well as some original letters surrounding his service in the Revolutionary War. Thank you for joining us on Zoom. Just by showing up, you are supporting the programming that we can do at HSP. I want to give a special shout out to our HSP members. We appreciate your support. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you, and we will end the webinar. And I will also invite my friends on site to see our exhibit downstairs, Cartoons as Political Speech in Colonial and Contemporary America. It is open through August 2nd. So thank you all for joining us. Have a great evening.
Right. Can I pull that?
And you're welcome to